Be warned, an unpopular opinion is incoming. Alright, I gave you your fair warning. Alright, here it comes. Modern Warfare 2019 is my favorite Call of Duty. Oh, ouch, that's gotta hurt. Oh boy. Alright, here's another one. Brace yourself, because I'm about to rub it in even more. It could have been the best game in the series. Lord have mercy. Just hearing that sentence from me, someone who's extremely critical of modern COD, is probably jarring. But hear me out here. While the game obviously has its flaws, and a lot of them at that, whether you think these flaws are major or minor, something still doesn't sit quite right with me. Why did Modern Warfare 2019 receive such bad reviews, and is typically seen as the start of COD's dark ages, even with so many positive qualities, and with such huge popularity online? Wow, I know, a lot of viewers right now are probably about to burst a couple blood vessels trying to process what I just said. How could I, a YouTuber who's generally critical of modern Call of Duty, especially the absolute trash fire that is Modern Warfare 2, say something so far-fetched and against my normal opinions about modern COD? Well, let me rub it in a bit more. I would go even as far to say that Modern Warfare 2019, the reboot of the original Modern Warfare series, could have easily been a masterpiece, and one of the best Call of Duty games of all time, had Activision not fallen victim to thinking they could build the game to be more friendly to newer, lesser skilled casual players, and innovate classic game mechanics. And yes, I know that's kind of a weird thing to say. First off, how can a game with such poor reviews be this close to being one of the best in the series? How does innovation ruin a game? Well, let me tell you guys a story you can probably relate to. It's 2020, and the pandemic had just hit in March. We're all out of school, businesses closed down, and as an American youth, with the release of Modern Warfare having been around 6 months prior to the shutdown, we were searching for entertainment during this time of seemingly not being able to do anything. Luckily, even if the physical world shuts down, we still all have the internet, and with the most anticipated next-gen COD titles having recently come out, many fans of the franchise hop on the game, whether with friends or alone, and have some fun playing COD for hours. With the release of Warzone's enormous map and stunningly realistic graphics and 100-player count in every match, it almost seemed surreal, especially to have one of the biggest battle royale experiences ever created to be released in the middle of an international crisis. This release, since it was free, was likely accessed by everyone that was up to date on video games, especially with all the free time that we all had. In a sense, Modern Warfare was the gaming medium that brought together all of the world's youth that plays video games, which is basically any young person on a gaming console. And Warzone's large map and player count gave almost this surreal feeling of interconnectedness despite what was going on in the world. In a way, it felt like it was you and your squad against the world, and not just because it was you versus 96 other players. It was almost like this was our way of getting past the disaster of not being able to attend school or work, to work together in Verdansk, to discover new areas and secrets of the map, to drop in new locations and be the last team standing. This fun, new battle royale experience, in contrast to the craziness that was happening outside of the safety of our homes, was again surreal. It felt like when we played, we had this feeling of separation from the unpredictability of the outside world, and we were brought together by our love for games. A much more major part of my pandemic gaming experience than Warzone ever was the multiplayer experience of Modern Warfare 2019. And you'll be fairly surprised to know that I barely ever used the quick play button. But what I did use a lot, which I'm sure everyone used a lot, was my favorite button in the whole game. The button that read, shoot the ship. Shoot the ship, as we all probably remember, was a 24/7 playlist of the two most fun maps the game had to offer, Shoot House and Shipment. Now, Shipment was a headache for a lot of players because there are unarguably a ton of flaws with the map. The spawns are awful, the map is absolutely tiny, and you basically never have a second to breathe. Even upon spawning, you were often greeted with bullets to the face. Nonetheless, if you had mastered even slight levels of movement and had decent aim, the map was so overstimulating and action-packed that it made Nuketown look like child's play. As the two smallest maps in the game, they were able to accommodate the great movement that was offered, and also accommodate faster, snappier weapon classes that were otherwise useless on the typically larger maps within the game. Every time you hopped into a match of either Shoot House or Shipment, you knew it was going to be fun, fast, and full of action around every corner, and you knew that you were going to get lots of kills if you were sweaty and quick enough. Some call these maps so fast that they're just brainless running around and gunning, but that was the true beauty of it. I barely ever even looked at the minimap, for crying out loud. I just ran around shooting people. Now again, I know this sounds sacrilegious, but just bear with me and hear me out. I'm about to make my point. While the action might have been more brainless than a map where you have to use good positioning and game sense more to your advantage than just running around, Shoot the Ship, looking back on it and past all the nostalgia that it brings me, highlighted one of the most positive qualities of Modern Warfare 2019, and that was its simply extraordinary gunplay and movement. I remember the first time I ever played the game. I could only use the Kilo 141, and I spawned into a game of ground war, and let me tell you, my jaw was genuinely on the floor with how good the gunplay and movement felt. It was snappy, fast, responsive, freeing, and buttery smooth. I thought with the high graphical quality, it would sacrifice performance and responsiveness, but that didn't even take a small toll on the movement options. It was almost like whatever my brain could think, my operator could perform. The responsiveness of all the gunplay and movement options was incredible. There was no clunkiness or input lag at all, and the smooth frame rate just made it even better. This style of movement was truly the peak of Call of Duty's movement, and unfortunately it only got worse as the games continued, with the worst movement seen in MW2, which was such a huge downgrade from its prequel. Maps like Shoot House and Shipment secretly highlight what the game could have been if we saw more smaller scale maps. And don't come at me saying that not every map can be brainless fun. I understand that. The thing is, even if Shoot House and Shipment were a little larger and had more cover, they would still be extremely fun maps. And don't get me wrong, the game had good maps. Not many, but it did have them. Hackney Yard quickly became one of my favorites. Condor Hideout and Gunrunner were also great to play on, and Cheshire Park, although the sightlines were pretty atrocious, it wasn't a bad experience in quick play. However, maps that were completely oversized and way too complex were one of the reasons that this game's potential of being fun regardless of the map was killed. These oversized maps were not only far too slow to be enjoyable, far too complicated to be aware of all angles at once, and far too easy to camp on, their biggest and most fatal issue was that they killed the potential for the amazing movement and gunplay the game offered. This is one of the greatest mistakes the game ever made, in my opinion. The fact that we had such amazing movement and snappy gunplay, but only a handful of maps to truly use these newfound movement and gun skills on effectively, killed any potential for these gameplay mechanics to really gain the traction they deserved. Until either you got one of the rare small maps, or you queued up for Shoot House and Shipment. This is one of the most foolish moves I think Activision pulled in this game. Imagine we got basically all smaller maps with maybe 1 or 2 big maps, and the ability to vote for maps. This game would have been on the way to being one of the most fun COD experiences to date, but there were other mistakes holding it down as well. Another fatal flaw that undermined the smooth gameplay was the addition of so many new ways to restrict movement and encourage camping. I'm going to rattle off a quick list. Claymores, bouncing betties, no red dot pings in the minimap, elephant footsteps and no dead silence perk, and doors! Oh, brother, doors are the worst. They even earned the game the nickname Modern Doorfare. But here's the thing, right? Activision did something amazing, and that was having the smoothest movement and gunplay ever produced in COD, and in my opinion, any boots in the ground shooter. But in an attempt to balance out the sweatier movement, they decided to add a couple of things that would make moving around that much harder and encourage campers to camp to their heart's content by sliding into a claymore, running past a bouncing betty, or elephant running up a flight of stairs just to get killed by a camper with a fire shotgun behind a door, and only being able to have dead silence as a regenerating field upgrade every so often. The very strong movement options are severely weakened by how easy it is to push one button, hold down your sights, and defeat a player who is highly skilled with their movement and gunplay. Now, I'm not saying camping is completely wrong. In some cases, even I camp. I camp when I'm on high kill streaks, when I don't know who's around a corner, when I want to lock down an area. The main problem was that in Modern Warfare 2019, camping was way too viable of a strategy. It was too easy to do and too rewarding, and was also encouraged by the average map size, the doors, and the equipment that was available. Camping is a viable option and a legitimate playstyle, though it kills me to say, but it was far too easy to do. Movement and gunplay are difficult to master and very rewarding, but there is basically no counterplay when it comes to beating campers behind a closed door with a claymore and a dragon's breath shotgun. Activision needed to make camping more difficult and require more skill and awareness, because even camping can require some skill, but the problem is that players could just sit there behind a closed door and only worry about one angle, because the door and the claymore behind them would have them covered. To make camping more difficult, removing the perk to carry 2 lethals would be a start, and removing doors so that campers would have to constantly be aware of all angles around them would be another change, and adding a silent footstep perk so they have to be more reliant on their reflexes against people rushing their position would make rushing and camping more equal in difficulty. It's such a simple thing to remove doors and add dead silence, but because of the narrative that you have to appeal to the lesser skilled casual players in order to earn the most money, Activision decided to go to the dark side on this one. You can never escape dying to a camper every once in a while, but the sheer amount of times you can get destroyed by a player who is impossible to see or reach, and impossible to counterplay because of how favorable and easy camping is, made dying to seemingly invincible campers that much easier, and so much more aggravating, because they seem to be unstoppable and everywhere, and it took absolutely zero skill whatsoever. If Activision could have balanced out the two playstyles to require an equal amount of mastery of their respective skill sets, the game would have been a lot more entertaining. So simple, yet so overlooked. Think about it. Campers had so much in their kit that they could have used. Doors, claymores, fire shotguns, all these closed off rooms, all these really long angles and sightlines on these enormous maps. And what did the rushers have? Good movement and good gunplay. Absolutely nothing in the game complemented their kit, and they were playing with the bare minimum against players that had the absolute maximum advantage because the game complemented their playstyle so much more. The balancing and the meta was absolutely atrocious. Getting back on track though, the feeling of queuing up for Shoot the Ship back when the game was still relevant and in its prime was one of the greatest feelings I felt on any COD, other than one other button. The button to queue up for Search and Destroy. Search and Destroy reached its peak in popularity when Modern Warfare 2019 was in its prime, and carried a few years even after its release, during both Cold War and Vanguard's lifespans. It was undoubtedly the most popular niche on YouTube regarding Modern Warfare 2019, and many YouTubers gained ridiculous followings just because they were so good at search. Search and Destroy on Modern Warfare 2019 is unparalleled in entertainment value compared to other CODs in my opinion, and I'm sure most who have played it will agree with me. Just this segment of Modern Warfare 2019 alone had its own fan base. With everything I just mentioned regarding the great movement and gunplay, and the unparalleled trash talk and competition, this Search and Destroy was not only a true test of skill, it was one of the most fun experiences I've had playing anything in this modern era of video games. Ironically, the larger maps somewhat complemented the pace of play of Search, because it was a slower mode to begin with. These bigger maps give you more creative options, and you aren't punished for moving around as much as you are when you're moving around on smaller maps. It also extended games and made rounds on larger maps much more interesting. Although most everyone complained about large maps in the core game, having oversized maps in Search and Destroy was actually not that bad of an experience. Knowing you had a fun night of Search with your friends awaiting you on a quiet rainy night during the pandemic, safe in your room on Modern Warfare, is an indescribably powerful memory for me regarding my history with video games. It wasn't only endless fun, it was genuinely quality gaming, and I think it got tarnished by how poorly the game was received as a whole. If the game isn't, then certainly Search and Destroy on Modern Warfare 19 was in and of itself a masterpiece. Even with how many unfair and ratty options players could choose from, the game mode still held up for the entire lifespan of Modern Warfare 2019 and beyond. I feel no shame in commending it for what it did right, because it was truly phenomenal, even if it wasn't Activision's intention to make it this darn good. Hate me all you want for commending modern COD, but I know we were all thinking it. Now, I know most everyone watching this video probably has some association with playing Search and Destroy, because the mode was extremely popular on this game. Something about how the game felt just really brought this mode to life, and it truly flourished in this iteration. But I haven't even touched upon one of the greatest game modes to ever grace Call of Duty that was introduced in Modern Warfare. Can you guess? It's none other than the 2v2 elimination round-based deathmatch, Gunfight. Gunfight hit the nail on the head in so many ways. The maps were very well designed, for the most part, and the gameplay never, ever got stale. I remember during the pandemic, I'd stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning with the same friend, playing Gunfight over and over and over again, having the best conversations and trash-talking the other team to no end. And we did happen to pull through on some serious victories. To this day, we can still remember some specifically insane matches of Gunfight that we played more than 3 years ago. I remember there was one when we played 2 very young kids, probably around 10 to 13 years old, and they were talking lots of trash, and they were up 5-0, one more round to win the game, and me and my Gunfight buddy ended up clutching the game, and we talked a fair deal of smack to them afterwards. Good times. Gunfight did so many things right. For one, it appealed to players who had one buddy to play with and who didn't want to play with anyone else. It allowed friendships to grow, skills to improve, and the game to be enjoyed in a brand new way that no game has really ever seen before. The short round-based format of the game mode and the random loadouts made it accessible to all players, regardless of their weapon progress or account level. Exciting plays and nail-biting matches were consistently happening, and the fun never faded. Gunfight was truly a revolutionary and timeless mode. Unfortunately, the mode didn't get as much love as it truly deserved, receiving only minor updates, a few new maps since launch, and randomly rotating from 2v2 to 3v3 format with absolutely no warning. I truly think that Gunfight should have been invested into more. There could have been 3v3 and 4v4 playlist options, more tournaments than there were, and maybe some map voting. Hopping on Gunfight is another great nostalgic memory for me, and it was truly a masterpiece of an idea. It's funny to look back and take an honest look at this game. There are truly a lot of golden masterpiece features that are marvels of modern gaming, such as the absolute pristine movement and gameplay, the search and destroy and gunfight experiences, and the shoot the shit playlist, but I get that sometimes that's not everyone's favorite. Although all of these, aside from the general movement and gunplay, are more minor parts of the game, they truly reflect how Modern Warfare 2019 would have easily been a masterpiece had Activision not tried to cater towards the casual players by making motionless, campy gameplay way too easy and super advantageous to play by adding doors, large larger maps, claymores, and bouncing betties, and no option to have silent footsteps as a permanent perk. When reviewing a game, you should typically look at all of its aspects. In my opinion, the shoot the ship, gunfight, and search and destroy experiences were all 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 in my humble opinion. The only deductions being made because some of the maps some of them just weren't good. But because everything else basically degraded the game's quality and made it very annoying to play without camping, and punished higher skilled movement by allowing for lower skilled players to have an edge doing an easier and much more boring strategy, it made the overall experience much worse if you weren't only playing those 3 things. You guys get what I mean? Like, if you click quick play, you're bound to be aggravated. But if you play either search, gunfight, or shoot the ship, you're bound to have a good time. That was my experience playing the game. I only played those 3 modes. I'm sure a lot of people agree with me here when I say that if Modern Warfare 19 simply didn't have so many big maps, got rid of doors, bouncing betties, and added a perk that allowed for silent footsteps, it would have been a masterpiece with a good, balanced skill gap, which each strategy from rushing to camping, taking skill, but still each being viable and fair. Basically, if I was able to enjoy 90% of game modes and maps instead of a measly 10%, it would have been a very highly appreciated title, because let's face it, playing any mode on any map besides Shoot House, Shipment, and a few other well-designed smaller maps was absolutely painful, and those made up a majority of the game, making around 90% of the game unbearable. And I'm not just pushing that faster gameplay with dead silence and no doors is the best gameplay because that's what I want to see. I'm saying because without these things, Call of Duty becomes far too slow and boring, and makes slower, campier gameplay not only supremely easier than running and gunning, but also makes it so viable that it's basically impossible to kill a camper as a rusher, because the more highly skilled player's toolkit is restricted to just insanely good movement and fast guns, which again, only gets you so far when it comes to dealing with a fire shotgun camper behind a door in a corner with a claymore next to him. Removing the things I've mentioned probably a dozen times by now doesn't even ruin it for campers either. It just balances the playing field and doesn't make you invincible if you decide to camp in a room, because you won't have 1,000 claymores at your disposal, nor will you have a door as cover. It makes it fun for all parties, with the chance to eliminate other types of players purely with how good you are, and how well you can counterplay players with different playstyles than you. This all being said, Modern Warfare 2019 was a masterpiece buried under the rubble of a disastrous, unbalanced meta that is heavily catered towards moving around less, and horrible map design choices that make the amazing, unparalleled, sexy, beautiful movement and the incredible, seamless gunplay nearly obsolete on most maps. Looking past nostalgia and confirmation bias, this game was 90% a mess and 10% an amazing shooter experience. It just depends on what area of the game you appreciated and experienced the most. As much as this is an opinion piece, I do think certain modes highlighted the best qualities of the game and brought clarity to what makes the game great, and what would have made it a masterpiece if the game consistently performed and flowed like the better maps and modes. I understand this opinion may not be popular among certain people who are very critical of modern COD. I'm not trying to present it that the game is 10 out of 10, but certain things about the game definitely are. If Modern Warfare 3 looks like this game with better maps, and from the map trailer, even better and faster movement, we might have a decent, actually playable, bearable game on our hands. Let's just hope they dial down the EOMM and fix the atrocious gunplay and hit reg from Modern Warfare 2. But knowing Activision, we can never be too sure, right? Did you guys like Modern Warfare 2019? Did I say what we were all thinking? Let me know down in the comments, and like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. But that's all I got. Take it easy.